Have you seen this? The movie that sunk Bobcat Goldthwait's career for 20 years? No, not Hot to Trot.
Welcome to Have You Seen This?
The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten media.
All discussions will be spoiler heavy.
You have been warned. It's the one after that. It is 1991's Shakes the Clown, his writing and directing debut.
Ugh, I thought we were talking about Pervy the Clown tonight.
We could dedicate a whole month to Pervy the Clown just to go episode by episode. That, of course, being about 7 episodes.
Yeah, we really could.
Spread out since 2016.
And it would be like a spilling out of all the rage and pain that we have felt when watching Pervy the Clown.
Just a catharsis of watching something that is fundamentally not entertaining.
But it does sum up the darkness at the heart of clowning, much like the movie we'll be talking about.
Yeah, man, what if it was like a clown, but like he wasn't happy? Like, what if he went to the doctor and said that he was unhappy?
Please, tell me more. I've never heard this before.
Well, I read it.
Certainly not repeatedly on social media.
Yeah. For sale, clown shoes. They're yours.
Hey,
6 words.
But as it turns out, and for whatever reason we're talking about clowns a lot lately, maybe because of the absurdity of the society that we find ourselves in, or maybe just because we're punting because we didn't know what the fuck else to talk about. Who knows? You tell me.
Maybe because we saw another clown movie, we're just like, what is with fucking clowns? And we're trying to get to the clown source.
Right,
but this wasn't it.
Yeah, and as it turns out, and I mentioned this in the show notes of our episode on the Terrifier series, it turns out that scary clowns don't just go back to John Wayne Gacy, and I should have thought about it further, so, mea culpa and all that. But the dark, tormented, freaky clown probably goes back to the origins of clowning. And some of you may have looked at the Smithsonian article that I linked in the show notes for the Terrifier episode, which is an article in the Smithsonian about the history of clowning, which made the point that...
He's comedy and he's tragedy.
Right. It made the point that people have been clowning since at least the ancient Egyptians. So who's to say that our...
Oh, so someone who was wearing a dog's head was just joking around?
He was like, I just thought it would be funny. What?
Yeah.
And they were like, you shouldn't joke about death, dude. That's not cool. But,
So no crocodile head then. Fine.
So clowning goes back a very long way, and who's to say that our Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon ancestors didn't act a fool to make the other members of their tribe laugh? I mean, it's a possibility.
Be like, come on, guys, it's got to be, it's a little silly on some level, the whole theology thing. I mean, really.
Imagine Neanderthal sitting around, they're yeah, Bob's a funny guy, but he does a lot of fart jokes. And it's yeah, that's funny, but only for about 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. I kind of wish he would. I kind of wish he would get into something a little more sophisticated, hitting other people in the head or something. That's
right. Yeah, try some, work on some new flint napping material, or have you seen this in the news, folks? Have you seen this fire? What is the deal with fire?
Why, Tim, it's funny that you mentioned stand-up comedy, because that also strikes at the heart of the movie that we are talking about today, which I rather liked. I think probably because you set it up as very uneven.
It is very uneven,
yes. And you were 100% correct, because this was Bobcat Goldthwait's first feature as director, and he's directed quite a few movies since then, not just features, also documentary, but this was the first time he sat in the director's chair, and it kind of shows.
Oh, it absolutely shows, yeah.
It's a little bit uneven, as we said.
Yes, it is. It is poorly shot and edited, amongst other things. It features a host of significant comedians you don't remember the names of. A lot of them, I want to say, before they had found their voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of people that went on, from a small cast. There are a number of people who went on to better things, who I guess paid their dues by being in this.
Yeah, I mean, as well as working tirelessly on the road as stand-ups, because in fact this movie is essentially a satire of the stand-up comedy scene, and that was another reason why I found myself enjoying it, because I saw it described that way, and viewing it through that lens, there are parts of it which are really fucking funny, because if you know any stand-up comedians, you know that they're all insane fuck-ups.
Yeah, in that way, sort of the clown has been supplanted by the stand-up. Like, the miserable, like, jealous alcoholic who gets on stage to make you, like, laugh and feel jolly.
Yes.
So, yeah, in that way, like, that's the thing that on our Terrifier episode, that's, like, why are we even talking about clowns? Like, where are clowns anymore? That's, like, stand-ups are kind of the clowns now.
Yeah, and it isn't as though clowns don't exist. In fact, I think shortly after we did our Terrifier episode, I think when I was driving...
You were attacked by a clown. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I haven't unpacked that in therapy yet, Tim, so,
okay.
Maybe...
Well, maybe you can work it into your stand-up routine.
Yes. So I'll stop being such a miserable bitch, like 30% of the time. I think I was driving back from your place, and I was on the interchange of the 101 to the 405, and I was heading on the 101 north, and I saw a car headed 101 south that had that was advertising in their back window that they were a party clown with, like, their phone number. And
I think I may have seen that guy.
Right, and many of you will remember the Patton Oswalt bit from, like, the mid-2010s about, like, the world's worst party clown. And the documentary by Andrew Jarecki, Capturing the Friedmans, actually started out as a documentary about a very popular party clown on Long Island. But then the filmmaker found that there was, like, this whole other very big to-do with that clown's particular family. And that was how he ended up with Capturing the Friedmans. But the clown continues to hang on at the fringes of society.
To delight and amuse, yeah.
Yeah, but in a way, the clown always has been kind of a marginal figure. The person who makes him or herself ridiculous to get a laugh out of other people.
I'm right here, Jen. I know what you're getting at. I said appears.
One of the few social classes lower than clown is podcaster, so
right,
there is
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, at least like a clown, you kind of gotta go to school for it. You gotta at least have put some work into it.
You gotta be a little bit of an extrovert.
Yeah, it's like I have a laptop and a microphone.
Yeah, and I hide behind them all the time. Because the outside world is scary. But hey.
It is, yeah, it's full of clowns.
And that's the setting that you get with this movie, because it takes place in a town called Palookaville, which is not populated entirely by clowns, but it's like there's a clown presence that has moved in. Which... Yeah,
sort of there's like clown kayfabe. Like they never, I mean, with the exception of the opening scene, like clowns are never not in makeup. It is like a 24/7 lifestyle.
Right. But more morally depraved than BDSM.
Right. Yeah, than wrestling. Which is kind of a tough thing to like get past initially, because I don't know, it seems like Bobcat had an interesting premise, and that premise is, let's describe the just grinding misery of stand-up lifestyle but as filtered through the lens of clowns.
It's basically fucked up clown gets in trouble. That's the log line.
Yeah, well, he had like an interesting metaphor. There's a seed of an idea in here. The problem is the execution, as is often the case. I mean, I don't think that I'm going to have to disagree with Scorsese with the Wikipedia article.
And you are, of course, referring to Martin Scorsese defending the film to other people.
Right. Yes. Yeah, like there's a seed of an insightful idea in here that is poorly executed to the point of it's ultimately like, ideas are cheap because yeah, they are, and it's the execution that matters. This movie fails in the execution of conveying that germ of an idea of being like, if it were, because a lot of the movie takes place in this clown dive bar. I forget what the name of it is, like
Jumbo's Clown Room.
Yo, God, you want to go there later with the tough cookies or?
God, if there's one thing that Derby girls love, it's Jumbo's fucking Clown Room.
That and preying on younger lesbians.
Well, I think you and I said the same thing essentially. But I digress.
Yeah. But so it's a dive bar that kind of only serves clowns. Clowns is a distinct cast of society, and they have their own little clown drama and their clown cliques and their clown gangs, which are all neat ideas. They're ones that, like, if say I was also in my 20s, like Bobcat at the time, and I was in like a screenwriting class and I would have pitched that. People would be like, oh, that's very different. That's very, I'm curious to see what you do with that.
It's very high concept. I like it.
Yeah. And then I trip over my dick writing the screenplay. Because that's kind of what it feels like. There are a lot of seeds of ideas in this that aren't particularly well executed. And it isn't just the clown kayfabe of them just being clowns 24/7. It is also like other clown communities, like they have a rivalry with mimes that shows up again.
It's funny how they just like their immediate instinct is just to bash mimes.
Yeah, just a rival gang.
But
if
in a way, like,
turf war.
But gang warfare implies like it's like the Jets and the Sharks or the Bloods and the Crips, where there's kind of like an equal exchange. Like, this is straight up punching down.
Right, okay.
Because the mimes are so... while the clowns are seedy, the mimes are, kind of cheerful and hapless.
Yeah, they're more marginalized.
Yeah.
Until we meet one clown, or one mime. We'll get to that later. But yeah, they're much more... Yeah, they're much more... marginalized, but it is interesting too that it isn't just the regular class of birthday clowns, but then later on in the movie they introduce rodeo clowns, and you're like, oh yeah, that is a separate subculture of clowning. Like, yeah, I can see that. They do fuck all with it, other than being like, hey, here's a different kind of clown, and we have our own rules and we have our own bars that we go to.
Well, I think it is funny that you have like the kind of party clown entertainer type of clown, and then the rodeo clowns are like more like a biker gang, which makes sense if you're the kind of clown who has to distract bulls for a living.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's facile. It's... If you just kind of look at it, you're like, oh yeah, that's very different. And like, well, what else do you have to go with it? Be like, well, nothing. I just want to point out that it's different. I'm like, okay.
Jumping off of the different kinds of clown, party clown, mime, rodeo, evil.
Right, yeah.
Because there is an evil clown in this.
Yeah, and it's not one that lives in the sewer.
No, but he's a real asshole.
Yeah, but like I was saying, this is kind of a showcase of up-and-coming comedians who hadn't really gotten their break yet, like Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he was on SNL yet.
1991?
Yeah, 91.
Yeah, good question.
It would have been around that time anyway. But yeah, Julie Brown is in it. And it's great to see her. Although, Kathy Griffin.
Yes, Kathy Griffin. Several faces ago.
Yeah, unrecognizable.
Yeah. Like, you can tell it's her, but you're like, wow, she looks different.
Yeah, she looks like a totally different person than what she looks like now.
Florence Henderson in the opening.
Yeah.
In the opener, playing a slut.
Yeah.
A slutty mom.
Yeah. Which is a good start that the movie fails to follow through with, because the movie does start off just an ignominious, disgusting opening. But then it kind of doesn't go anywhere with that. Like, like Bobcat had a lot of ideas that he put them all in there, not giving any thought to how they fit together or if they supported any of the other ideas. It's just, this sort of meditation on clowning. Because it does start, well enough with him throwing up and being woken up by a slutty Carol Brady.
Yeah, and her son's stream
getting
of
pissed
piss
on by her kid. Yeah. It's like, that's a pretty good way to be like, hey, this clowning style, this lifestyle, it ain't all glamorous, kid.
Why, this guy seems like he is not on top of things.
Yeah. But, by the end of it, you can bet your bottom dollar that he will be.
Of a kind, yes.
Yeah. Which is also kind of from out of nowhere. But yeah, the standout of unknowns at the time is the evil clown that Jen mentioned. It's played by Tom Kenny.
Tom Kenny, SpongeBob.
Yeah, this is before SpongeBob. This is before Mr. Show. This is him, pounding the pavement and doing the work to like get good enough so that he can be on TV. And you see, like, he still has that same Tom Kenny energy. Like, you see a lot of the Altered State of Druggish-choosets.
Yeah.
Like, you see a lot of that character.
They'll know. God, they'll know.
Yeah, just like really over the top, really just on edge.
Yeah, and
because he plays a murderous clown in this.
That's one of the things that I
like, why do you hate me?
I really like the way that the characters are handled in this movie, because the way that they map onto the comedy scene, because a common trait that I've noticed among stand-up comedians, and it is along a spectrum, but they can be surprisingly thin-skinned for like a lot of different reasons. And
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and Binky, that's Tom Kenny's character, kind of embodies that, where he's quite cruel to other people. And, of course, it's a joke, but when it turns on him, he's just like hair trigger. Like screaming in your face. And I was like, yeah, that's...
Yeah, how dare you laugh at a clown?
Yeah, that's a lot like... It's like a lot of comedians, to be honest. Because if you've ever argued with a stand-up comedian on Twitter, like, they go from 0 to 100 in no time. Because the moment that they feel the joke has been turned around on them, that's when all the trauma comes to the surface. Like, all the stuff which made them comedians in the first place.
Yeah.
Because quite often, these are people who laugh to keep from crying.
Oh, nothing worse than a sad clown. Yeah, so insecure, traumatized, hair trigger, alcoholic.
Yeah.
Clowns.
Yeah, and alcoholism is a huge theme in this movie. Actually, pretty well handled, in my opinion, because it does get at the inexplicable quality of alcoholism, which is like a lot of other, which is like many mental illnesses, in that quite often the alcoholic will hurt themselves and the people around them and just keeps fucking doing it. And they can't stop. And it's just, when you get like Shakes the Clown, it's like, oh my God, this is so fucking depressing, dude. Which almost makes it funnier. Like, I think that's where like a lot of the humor of the movie came from for me, was the fact that this is a person in incredibly dire circumstances. Like, someone who really is that close to rock bottom, but is still...
But not able to do anything about it.
Yeah, still fucking up and just getting into these ridiculous circumstances. Because, the opening scene of him, like, waking up on the floor of a one-night stand's bathroom.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, like your life has not gone the way you thought it would, did it?
I mean, as compared to what? I mean, we do find out later that I guess he's like an orphan and he sort of was taken in by his boss, who then gets killed and he gets blamed for it.
Yeah, and I think it's good that they and I know from what you're saying about the film and, you know, what you said via text, and like I do take your point, because it's not like this is like a tightly constructed plot.
No, it was an inventive premise that had to have a plot crafted around it,
right? And
to like make a story.
And because of that, a lot of the details are just kind of sketched in, which I think is good, because giving Shake some kind of elaborate tragic backstory would be a little bit too much like the kind of thing that we're all sick of today, where it's like, oh, you love these characters? Let's give you a prequel. Like, let's give you a movie about like where Darth Vader came from. And it's like, you know, not to evoke Patton Oswalt again, but it's like, I don't care.
Right,
it doesn't
yeah,
fucking
or
matter.
like 101 Dalmatians. Like, we need to find out, like, oh, it turns out that Cruella de Vil is just misunderstood.
Yeah, like
Genius,
it doesn't
yeah.
it doesn't matter if, you know, if Shakes the Clown was a victim of child sexual abuse or something. All you need to know is that he's a clown, he's a fuck up, and he drinks too much, and his friends are worried about him.
Right.
It's that simple.
It is that simple.
Yeah. It's a movie
that threadbare is another word.
I do, and I agree with you up to a point, because it is choppy. It does feel like, this might be the nature of the film, because this isn't the kind of thing that, you know, anybody was going to spend a ton of money on. It's a first feature. I'm sure they had like a pretty tight shooting schedule.
Yeah, well, it was made for $1.5 million and made back 1/10 of that.
Right, and so it's perfect for our show.
Yeah.
And a thing that I believe Roger Ebert said about the movie in his very positive review of the film was that parts of it feel under-rehearsed. And I agree with that, because the cast is generally doing pretty good work, and some of them knock it out of the park, but it does have that feel of like, okay, like we just got to get this in the can and move to the next thing.
Yeah, the way that I look at it is a lot of the time you have these comedic actors, but they just kind of feel like it feels like they're just sort of being hung out to dry.
Right.
Where it's like, you know, Tom, we don't have the time or money or wherewithal to support you in this scene. We're just going to let you kind of try and carry this and do your best with it. Go, action.
Yeah, and it's not as though there aren't comedians who display incredible depth as actors, but this is very different from like Punch Drunk Love.
Right,
Adam Sandler.
Yeah, you have a lot around to another Adam Sandler movie. Yeah, you have a lot around to like help support and guide that comedic actor, rather than just being like, "Hey, go for it. You just talk, and you'll say something funny, and then we'll put that in." It's this sort of Judd Apatow school of directing.
Yeah.
Or put another way, the Robin Williams approach to comedy.
Ugh.
Because he does appear in this under a pseudonym, which you have to give him credit for doing what I can only imagine is a huge favor.
Oh, yeah.
To another young comedian.
I'm sure he appeared either for free or for greatly reduced pay, because he's even credited as Marty Fromage.
Yeah, and he's in, I think, 2 scenes, but he's just doing his Robin Williams shtick. Like, he doesn't really have any kind of like character. Like, there isn't anything that he needs to say or do. But it's just like, in this, you are a very energetic mime leading a class. Robin, go.
Yeah.
And he does his Robin Williams thing.
Yeah,
which is what so much of the rest of the movie is like.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he does okay, because honestly, I was bracing myself, and you know, maybe we can, if you don't mind, maybe we could take a little bit of a sidebar into talking about Robin Williams, because for many years I had very strong opinions about Robin Williams.
Okay.
And of course, he left us a few years ago. So
yeah.
He's not.
So you don't want to say anything bad about him, especially given the situation.
Oh, I don't give a fuck.
Well,
like, what's he gonna do? Like, come beat me up. He's fucking dead. And
he's gonna be like La Llorona. He's gonna show up and get you.
Oh God! Like
you will die off stage.
So I'll hear an absolute like interminable rapid fire monologue from far off, but it'll mean he's like hiding in my room or something, ready to kill me.
Yeah. Yep.
Christ, I would welcome death at that point. But
I don't know. I think a Robin Williams themed supernatural killer would be interesting. He just makes you do coke until your heart explodes.
Oh my God, it's like a Come Town bit. Like.
Oh yeah, we can't have that. People hate those.
Well, you know, I'll leave it to Nick Mullen. But Robin Williams. So, of course, even though he hasn't been active for many years due to being dead.
Yeah, he hasn't been in anything. I mean, I'm sure, you know, Disney's trying to exhume his corpse for another Aladdin go around.
Yeah.
But
yeah, in fact, I think that was a contentious thing for him on Aladdin. There was
his stipulation was like, you know, you can't use me on the poster and something else.
Right.
And then they're like, okay, yeah, sure, Robin, we'll do that, and then, you know, pay your lower rate. Then they fucking did it anyway because they're Disney.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know, like morals, yeah, but money is more important.
Yeah, and you know, who's going to tell the 800-pound mouse what to do? But
Robin did, but they just went back on their word.
Right.
Because they're Disney and they're utterly amoral. What do you expect?
But yeah, so Robin Williams is still, I think, generally liked by people who watch movies because, you know, a lot of people are still familiar with like Hook and Mrs. Doubtfire and whatever the hell else.
Good Will Hunting, even.
Yeah. So he had a lot of very good roles.
1 Hour Photo.
Mork and Mindy.
Yeah. God. Was that what's that movie where the guy can't sleep? Well, it was a thriller whodunit.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But anyway,
listeners, you've already figured it out. You don't need us.
Yeah, they're yelling at their speakers right now. Okay. Back to my point. Robin Williams, generally beloved actor. And I always felt at odds with that opinion of him because it wasn't as though he wasn't tremendously talented. Like, that's pretty obvious. It's just that, you know, in comedic parts, I found him very tiring. And then in serious roles, I found him incredibly maudlin.
Fair enough. Insomnia. That's what I was going to say. Directed by Christopher Nolan.
Oh.
Huh. Wonder what happened to him. Maudlin, yeah?
Oh, I'm sure he's fine. But anyway, so he was very successful and got a lot of plaudits for his dramatic roles. And it wasn't like he wasn't good at it. It was just like, oh God, like fucking Bicentennial Man. Are you kidding me? Like, look at this schlock, you know?
Well, yeah, definitely Bicentennial Man. I mean...
Patch Adams, Jacob the Liar. Like...
Finally, they were able to remake that Jerry Lewis movie, Day the Clown Cried.
Oh, Dead Poets Society?
Yeah.
Ugh. Like, it's... and I know I'm a hater, but I'm a lot like Bette Davis in that one scene in All About Eve. I detest cheap sentiment. And that's what a lot of his movies were. Or if you go to the comedic side, you just get incredibly tiring Robin Williams. I think that the best example of that is his performance as the King of the Moon in Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Okay.
And because that movie is also and I know there are people who like that movie, but a lot of it is sort of like Terry Gilliam at his most self-indulgent. So you're already kind of tired by the time that Robin Williams shows up in his cameo or whatever.
That's a lot to take in, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, by that time I'm always like, just shut up. Just shut up! Shut up!
Look, if I just say enough things, eventually you'll find one of them funny.
Exactly. And that's how I do it. I get that it was a form of comedy that worked for him, and I don't hate the guy or anything. It's just a lot of the time his work is not for me. I don't know how you feel about it, though.
Well, between watching this and some other movies, yeah, it has kind of caused me to like reevaluate like what was the appeal of Robin Williams, because I remember, you know, Aladdin being a big deal where it's pretty much just, be a stand-up on speed and just say whatever pops into your head.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was kind of for little kids.
Yeah.
And, I understand his desire to have a, different career turn of doing things like Insomnia and 1 Hour Photo, where it's like, oh, I've been Robin Williams I don't know, endearing clown my entire career, but maybe if I try and do something a little darker, that'll add, depth to my performance. It's kind of casting against type. And, I appreciate that, but going back and thinking, like, Mork and Mindy was before my time, so I didn't watch Aladdin because I'd watch a Disney movie.
That's for little babies.
Yeah, that's for people who like sell out corporate crap.
You were a teenager at the time, though, so
yeah. I still feel the same way about Disney.
Fair.
Yeah, I was right. So. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of overlap with, Robin Williams' career, where he was like an informative force in my idea of comedy. I knew about stuff he was in, but none of it really resonated with me. So then to see him, doing his bit in this, it's like, what was the appeal of Robin Williams?
And he's fine in the bit because he's a mime leading a mime class. It's like an aerobics class, but for mimes. And Shakes is, because he has been framed for murder, he's in disguise as a mime, the thing most hated by clowns.
Yeah, no clown would ever be a mime. It's the perfect cover.
Right. So he's got
because we need to have like a plot to this
thing. He's got to pretend that he knows what the fuck he's doing because Ron Williams picks him as his like special helper. But as it turns out,
because he's new there, so he's made to go up on stage. It's the sort of the like, I don't know, being singled out in a lecture hall in college cliche.
Yeah, when you're fast asleep in the third row.
Right. Yeah.
Don't ask me how I know.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the professor just doesn't care.
No. They're not being paid to care.
They're teaching out of a book. They've done this thing for years already. They aren't here like it's not about you.
Right. So the bit it's okay, and I think because I was bracing myself, I did not find Ron Williams as annoying in this part. I did laugh a few times, but the fact remains that for the most part, Robin Williams is not for me. I do like the movie Jumanji, the original. That movie was better than it had any right to be, in my opinion. Huh. And I like his cameo in the Kenneth Branagh film Dead Again.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Well, hey, there you have it. Yeah, I mean, I think that like my only touchstones for him really would be 1 Hour Photo and Insomnia. So.
So you were coming to him quite late.
Yeah, like I knew him as sort of like comedic wallpaper. Just the guy who talks a lot.
Well, I suspect that there were other comedians that meant more to you at the time.
Well, I mean, really, my sense of humor is probably most shaped by Bugs Bunny. I mean,
that's also why you cross-dress.
There's a cultural icon. Yeah. That's why I live in a hole in the ground.
Bugs Bunny was gender fluid.
Yeah, Bugs Bunny can do whatever he wants. That's the thing.
That's exactly
It's his world, and we're just living in it.
He's the trickster. But
yeah,
that's a whole other archetype. Right now we're talking about clowns and clowning.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, anyway.
And the way clowns are just like intrinsically sordid and sad.
Yeah, just this gross, unpleasant, miserable world that this movie inhabits. Like it doesn't even have like that kind of like light like snobs versus slobs kind of fare that you'd see in like contemporary comedies like I don't know like Caddyshack or Revenge of the Nerds or something. And it isn't a sort of like world of whimsy like Pee-wee's Big Adventure,
right?
And it isn't like I wouldn't even know what you describe like UHF as. Well, because those are movies that they exist in the world, but a skewed version of what we're used to.
Well, I think if you take UHF and Pee-wee, and if you were trying to cram those in the same box, it's kind of like an innocent in a hostile world. Okay. Which is one thing. Yeah. But in the case of movies like Shakes the Clown, it's us identifying with a true underdog.
Okay.
Like, we're rooting, we root for Pee-wee and Weird Al just because it's like, oh, hey, they're childlike and fun. And then in Shakes the Clown, it's like, God, this guy is just really, like, just at the bottom of the barrel. Like, and you
right. It would
bad.
Be like, yeah, like if you try to put Shakes in, like, the UHF world, like, where would he fit? Because some of the gags in this feel like we're trying to be in like a Pee-wee's Big Adventure, like the thing where he's chased by the cops and he has to stop because like ducks are crossing the street and he drives like a little clown car where it's like this. I think this is supposed to be whimsical, but like a curdled version of whimsical.
Well, it's funny because like all these people came out of like the same milieu, like milieu.
Yeah.
I'm sure Pee-wee and Bobcat like cross paths because that's the other thing
in,
is
like groundlings together or something.
It kind of captures that incestuous world of comedy. It's like you see like all the comedies seem to be by like the same people like improvising together, at least lately.
Right. Yeah.
So everybody knows everybody, and it also captures kind of like the backbiting quality of that, like the clowns in the bar, their resentment of Binky's success because the old host of the clown cartoon show has just been fired, and it's like, oh, who's going to replace him? Like, I hope it's Shakes, but no, it's Binky, and everyone hates his guts. And it does capture that kind of that backbiting quality of the performing arts.
Yeah, and I guess to like put it in real world terms, it is Conan getting passed over for the Tonight Show in favor of Jay Leno when Johnny Carson stepped down.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I was a big Conan, stan at the time.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Conan's a very funny guy.
I've been watching bits now. Like the, what was it? It just came up on social media as the Muppet Faces of Death. Like, there's some great bits in that. And a lot of great comedians that came out of that. I mean, Robert Smigel to name one.
Yeah, I remember when late night TV was funny.
Yeah, wow.
Because like, I mean,
ago. And and all those people are envious and miserable too. That's where all the comedy comes from.
Now I'm finding myself wondering like how much Jimmy Fallon is like Binky the Clown in real life, because
you think that he's killed someone.
I mean, but that's the feeling
like,
that
I'm not ruling it out.
That's the feeling I have about people who get to that level of success, because you have to be ruthless to a certain degree.
Oh, you're thinking of Tina Fey, who has legitimately killed someone. Like, statistically, like, we can assume there's at least one skeleton in Tina Fey's closet, right?
Yeah, I mean, just look at anybody who cut their teeth on SNL. Yeah. Like, famously depraved environment at SNL through the years. So, yeah, of course. But, hey, that's comedy.
Yeah. Do you think Tina Fey has killed someone and gotten away with it, Jen?
Probably.
Yeah, okay. Someone you'd never would have heard of, like a roommate in college or something. The girl lived down the hall.
Yeah, she was annoying anyway.
Right, yeah. It was a joke.
Oh, yeah. God, it's funny. Just, God, learn to take a joke.
Yeah, God, start breathing again and learn to take a joke.
But anyway, back to Shakes the Clown.
Yeah, so just the dark, hateful, incestuous world of comedy.
Yes, which very neatly maps onto the dark, hateful world of clowning, as it turns out.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, that was Bob being like, I'm going to make this a little different. I'm going to need to be about clowns.
That's a good Bobcat.
That's what keeps people coming back, my half-assed impersonations.
Are you going to do your Dan Carlin again?
I am absolutely going to do another Dan Carlin voice.
Tonight on Hardcore History, the history of clowning.
The history of clowns. No. One thing about clowns, though, is that you can read on Audible. The latest. I got nothing.
We actually could talk about the history of clowning, because I did mention that Smithsonian article, which goes into a little bit of depth on just like how far back clowning goes.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple of like archetypal clowns in like the 1800s, one of which was Joseph Grimaldi, who was
a Grimaldi warrior
who was just incredibly famous in Europe at the time, but also had just a ridiculously tragic, awful life. There was another clown in France who was also very popular, and then he killed a young boy with his walking stick. But
I get it.
But was acquitted.
Hey, it's all part of the act.
That's so French. I mean, it's like, look at Roman Polanski just going to Venice like it ain't no thing.
And another clown who died tragically, the woman who put on that whole feminine mystique thing until she died in a hotel room by herself, Marilyn Monroe. She was one of those glamorous clowns.
Check out our blonde episode.
Yeah, I mean, just like the ridiculousness of like the makeup and the hair. Who was she fooling?
That, you laugh, but I remember watching Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Uh-huh.
And just the opening scene with Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell dancing with, and fully glamorized with their like bright red lipstick. And it's like, this is a drag act.
Yeah.
I mean, I know performing femininity is a thing, but like this is like next level.
Right. Yeah. And people have been trying to achieve that, this, idealized fantasy of a world that never really existed.
Yeah. Tons of lipstick, big pointy cone titties.
Yeah.
Speaking of titties, Julie Brown.
Just like clowns. Right. Yeah. One of the points in the negative of this, like, we have a friend who well embodies so much of Julie Brown. But Julie Brown kind of exists of a like type of girl, and like I said, a lot of comics in this who went on to better things hadn't quite found their voice. Maybe I'm out of line, but I feel like Julie Brown is just doing Madeline Kahn in Blazing Saddles.
Right, without the Marlene Dietrich impersonation, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that Julie isn't doing her best work in this.
Oh, it's that slight lisp.
Slight? That is you think that every R is a W. That's her slight lisp.
Tim, she's twying.
I guess so.
I mean, she's fine, but it goes back to what I was saying
she's fine in an underwritten part.
Right, and like I said, I agreed with Roger Ebert that a lot of the acting feels slightly under-rehearsed. I think that was true of a lot of her scenes. It is a thankless role because, forget having the girlfriend part. Like, in this case, you're the girlfriend of a clown.
Yeah.
Like, she's not a clown herself. She's a very talented bowler.
Not that we see any of it, short of one scene. It is mentioned offhandedly in a very schizophrenically edited first 20 minutes.
That the first part of the movie is interesting because it's got like this there's this roving camera in it which appears to come from a completely different movie, and I wonder if that isn't one of the reasons why Scorsese defended it. Is the way that it like, oh, it's the mean streets with clowns. Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. Like, you start in a room and then you move from character to character, and that's fine because it does give the movie a little bit more texture. Like, it does give it a more serious feel. Like, I guess it kind of ups the pathos to have it shot a little bit like a drama in parts instead of a comedy about a town that is infested with clowns and mimes. Right, but the movie never really makes up its mind about what it is, because we have both of those things. It's funny that you say that, and I don't know if it was just because you, I'm not attacking you for your opinion, because of course your opinion is valid, but the impression you gave me of the movie was that it was just going to be an absolute disaster. I think your word was exhausting. Yeah, and maybe that isn't the right word for it, but so much of it just kind of doesn't really go anywhere, and a lot of it is just sort of a dead end before we kind of reach this rote conclusion. Right. Well,
Like like my takeaway from it is like again going back to that screenwriting analogy, like this does feel like someone's first effort because it is all over the place. It has an unusual seed, like this something that's like I want to make myself, and I'm not like I'm telling on myself or anything, but it's like I want to stand out in this screenwriting class. I'm going to try and do something that's very high concept, that's very different. But then when they say, okay, what actually happens in your movie? And you're like, shit. There's a murder mystery. There's a car chase. There's two cops that snipe at each other.
I admit I did not get what he was getting at with the cops. Just very strange bits with the cops.
Yeah, it's like he had an original idea, but he just padded it out with a lot of cliche concepts.
Right, and I of course like the the partners working together in a case. That's a pretty durable thing, and there's a lot of directions you can take it in. It does feel like there was some improvisation, but those maybe were my least favorite bits in the movie because I was like, I don't understand what you're telling me with these characters.
Definitely.
Like they're just cops who like one's kind of happy, the other one's kind of a dick, and they argue. It's like, all right.
Yeah, and it just comes from out of nowhere. It's like that scene should start from like here are two cops and build from there, but it starts like in third gear.
Right.
Where like already they're like at each other's throats, and it's like we just got here. What are these our main characters now? Like,
and it could have a lot to do with if there was some improvising on the set and you have to work with what you got in the can, which I think also contributes to the choppy feel of the movie. I think if you're like a Mike Lee and you've done like months of work with your actors before putting one thing on a frame of film, then the environment you have for improvisation is going to be that much more supportive to the actors. This was probably a little more anarchic, to put it mildly.
Yeah, all of their character work and all of their rehearsals happened like on the same day that they were shooting.
Right.
And that comes through. And yeah, this is why it's like the movie is filled with a lot of these half-baked performances, because there's the seed of an idea that didn't really get enough of an opportunity to grow, and maybe that's Bobcat doing his first writing and directing. Maybe it was the budget, but for whatever the reason is, this is what we end up with, where a lot of it is good comedians with like a rushed script doing kind of hack material.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the hackiness is part of the bit, like when Shakes gets forced off the road and his car goes up in flames, and of course he turns away from it in the foreground and says, "I just made my last payment."
Yeah, there's some stuff that I will accept, like Tom Kenny's character, like he's doing some just really hoary material.
Yes.
But it's the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, this is probably what clowns were doing at the time, or maybe this wasn't really widespread, but it became overused in the intervening 25 years since this came out.
Yeah, it could be that, or it could be, and it could also be that because Binky, it is implied, is like slightly more successful than most of his clown brethren, who are just kind of drinking away their sorrows in the bar. Like,
yeah, which is why everyone hates him.
Yeah, and I know you'll have experienced it as a creative person. A lot of times the people you meet who are the most successful in a creative field are not the most talented. In fact, I would argue like a great deal of the time that's true.
I can think of one example in particular, but I won't say.
Yeah, we're all thinking of something or someone.
Yeah. Yeah, so Tom Kenny's got his bit, and it is funny that he does a little bit of Goodfellas in this, because that came out just the year before. So he's with his two clown henchmen. He's like, am I a joke to you? You think I'm funny? I'm like, I get it.
And Scorsese went and saw a screening of this. He's like, you got what I was going for. Good job, Bobcat.
This is a great movie. This is a wonderful picture.
you gotta give it up for Marty. Always, supporting the little guy. Supporting the little clown.
Yep.
The little clowns of Happy Town.
The killer clowns from outer space.
Do you know of the little clowns of Happy Town?
I'm guessing it was some midget thing.
Tim, they're little person clowns. No, it was a cartoon that a friend of the show, Bitter Corella, knows quite a bit about, but that's a whole other side thing.
Okay.
If you've heard of the Little Clowns of Happy Town, please write in info@haveyouseen.us or join us on the Discord, where you can talk to us about the Little Clowns of Happy Town. And then we can all sit around with fixed smiles on our faces saying, like, why does this person know so much about the Little Clowns of Happy Town?
And that name is familiar too.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what from. So I guess I have to wait for someone to write in and then tell me.
Yes.
And be like, oh, I remember now.
Well, next episode we'll do a deep dive. No. But please do. Please do support us at the $5 and up level and join us in our Discord. It's a cool place for cool people. Not like a sad bar filled with alcoholic clowns.
Yeah, everyone there is a failure. You won't have anyone to resent.
Yeah, there's no Tom Kenny type to make you feel bad about yourself.
Right, yeah. But, he's good at this, despite, what he has to work with. I mean, Julie Brown is kind of one note. Like, she kind of comes and goes. There are times in the movie where, like, you forget. Yeah. Like, it kind of loses track of its own characters.
It is.
Like, we're focusing on the cops now. Now we're focusing on, him and Judy's relationship. And now we're focusing on Tom Kenny. And
it is a stock girlfriend character.
Yeah.
Very common to first attempts at screenwriting. And many made by well-established screenwriters.
Right. Oh, so you think I'm just being too hard on Bobcat?
No, I'm just being wry about the depiction of women on screen.
Well, I don't know. Does anyone really care what women think?
I know I don't.
Right? Like, you would know better than anyone. So yeah, it's a 90-minute movie and 30 minutes in, nothing's really happened. I think that is, Bob's just kind of like wants to seep in the sort of misery of the clown world as kayfabe. Right. And he's kind of got Julie Brown in there somewhere just as like only exists in reflection to Shake's failings as a clown and as a boyfriend.
Right, because the first third is really it's all character stuff. No, it's it's
being generous.
Right. Well, I know Tim will disagree with me, but I felt like it worked quite well. And again, because my expectation of this movie was like, oh God, here we go. And by the way, it's free on Tubi right now if you want to watch it. And I think some of you might enjoy it. I did.
Maybe, yeah.
Because the pitch Tim gave me was that it was a big mess. So I was bracing myself.
Yeah. And
then watching it in the frame of mind of this is someone who is writing in a veiled way about the comedy world, I found it to be quite truthful, and in spite of its flaws, very funny in parts.
Do you not find it to be a big mess?
Well, though? I do think it is messy. I think it's uneven. It does feel like a first feature. But when I think of some of the genuine messes that I've seen, some of which were for this show, I mean, it's not. It isn't like a just like a clockwork crackerjack narrative. It's not an astonishingly deep character study.
Yeah.
But if you take the movie on its own terms, it generally works okay. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I've seen such a wide spectrum of movies. I've seen movies that just fail in every way possible. And I don't think that this was a failure, in spite of it not really making money and not really gaining much of a following until many, many years later. I think it's a creditable first attempt, and I understand what Goldthwait was going for, even if it isn't like a stone masterpiece right out of the gate.
I mean, if what he's going for is comics are jealous alcoholics. I mean, I think that's kind of clear.
Well, that kind of brings me to a thing that I actually wanted to ask you about, because we were kind of joking about the movie over text, and something about how, like, oh gee, like, stand-up comedians, aka clowns, are severely emotionally disturbed fuck-ups. So that's new. And I think it's easy to get in the mentality of everything that you see on the screen has to be something absolutely new and different that's just going to blow your mind, like it's inventive and you've never seen anything like this before, which is fine. I think it's good to not to fall back on cliche. When you're writing, don't just regurgitate characters and situations you've seen in other movies or TV shows. Like, try to write something truthful. But even though the tragic clown and the comedian who's laughing on the outside, crying on the inside, is very cliched, if there's a certain amount of spark to it, or brio or creativity, I think it's okay to kind of go over that well-trodden ground. For some people, it might just be too boring, which is fine. It's like, I just really don't care about... I mean, it's like that... What was that Adam Sandler movie that came out a few years ago, like Funny People or whatever? Okay. Which is like... I'm like, okay, like, I don't even care if it's good. I'm not going to... I'm not going to watch a movie like that if you paid me, because I don't give a shit about, like, the tragicomic lives of stand-up comedians. It's like, fuck off. This is too insular.
Yeah, or even
for
like
me.
the Tom Hanks Sally Field
Punchline, yes.
Punchline,
or
yeah.
The way that a lot of times movies about the movie industry are just like, oh my god, like, who cares?
Right, yeah, like, unless you're already seeped in that, you're like, I don't care. Like, why am I interested in this as someone who doesn't already have, like, a vested interest in it? Like,
yeah.
You need to, like, give me a reason to care beyond just like, well, you already know all this stuff, right?
Right. And
for some people that works and some people it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, my complaint, against your point, not that it's wrong though, is that, yeah, you can have a movie that is about a topic that it doesn't have to be like as new and inventive, but it gets back to my initial point, which is, once you have this idea, the question is, what do you do with it? And I feel like Shakes doesn't really do a lot with that premise, other than be like, yeah, they're miserable, drunks, and a bunch of fuck ups, and it's like, okay, what is it building towards? Like, what happens here? It's like, well, then we have kind of a damsel in distress, and then we have a mustache twirling villain at the end, because we need to have some kind of narrative arc in this movie that is otherwise just a meditation on the misery of being a person who
makes other people laugh for a living.
Yeah, but is sad on the inside. And like that's the thing that feels bolted on about this that I'm really not on board with.
Oh, I agree, because just kind of like a non-narrative about clowns and clowning,
yeah,
is not exactly going to get butts in seats, which is why I think, like, it's like, okay, set up the character in the first third, and then the rest of it we kind of have a wacky plot. And that is very, like, screenwriting 101. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, if there was more from, like, the character building in the first third that carried through to the rest of the movie, that would make sense. I think ironically, the way to fix this, not that you think it needs fixing, but I do, would actually be to make it a smaller movie. If you can find much of this to the drama and interplay at the clown dive bar, I think you actually have something. If you dispensed with the plot of Binky being a murderer and kidnapper, mm-hmm. and just had it being about the sort of cultural hostilities within the clown community. God, I can't believe I just said that. Within the clown community,
clown Americans.
Yeah. With and without the like vis-a-vis the mime community,
people of clowning,
right? And as it pertains to the wild card, which is the rodeo clown, and then how they can facilitate sort of extra clowner, activities that perhaps a birthday clown wouldn't partake in. Then I think you have this interplay of different sort of lifestyles and resources and strengths and weaknesses that are all playing off each other. That if you focused primarily on those things rather than had a kind of jumped up car chase, then I think you might have a more poignant movie that I think the director was initially going for, because I think he was trying to focus more on pathos of these sad comics.
I don't know. I feel that I'm sorry. Finish your point first.
No, yeah, and I think that if he was able to focus more on that and more on the character, then you'd have something. But this being his writing and directing debut, he just didn't have the chops for pulling that off. Well, and that's why it kind of descends into just rote action comedy. Sure, and
I like I said, I do agree that it isn't like the strongest script in the world, but I think that I think that it actually tonally strikes the right note, which is very difficult to do. Like the moments when it falls into the moments when it,
because I just found the tone confusing, but go on.
The moments when the tone veers towards absolute tragedy are actually, I think, fairly well handled. Maybe because it's kind of that horrified laughter of like, oh my God, this guy's fucked up. Or like when he's, they're heading to the birthday party and his friends are like making him go cold turkey, which is a very bad idea with alcoholics, by the way. You hear that, right, Alcoholics Anonymous? But his friends just put him in the car. They're taking him to the birthday party and like, you can't have a drink, and he's just like sad and shaky and like vomiting on himself. It's just like, oh God, like it's really and
that sounds like someone who knows what they're talking about. But.
Right, and if I recall correctly, Bobcat Goldthwait maintains that he hasn't touched drugs or alcohol since he was 19, which sounds like someone who had either seen or experienced like very bad things around substance use, and that's why I was like, not for me, thank you.
Yeah, it is with good reason that he avoids those things.
Yeah, like I wondered if he was maybe a recovering alcoholic like so many comedians, but that was not actually the case. Like he decided very early on that it wasn't for him, which was, that's smart on his part. Because we have lost a lot of comedians to substance abuse problems.
Misadventure,
right.
Yeah.
But all of these tragic moments are kind of played tonally for me in a way that doesn't... I can think of other movies where the seesawing back and forth in tone just has almost made me sick to my stomach. Okay. Where you'll see something... and this is a very weird example, but do you remember that movie that came out in the late 90s when Hugh Grant was the hot thing, Mickey Blue Eyes?
Yes.
Yeah, like he gets mistaken for a gangster and blah, blah. Like, the tone of the movie is very light, and then there's a horrible beating and murder on screen. It's just like, ah!
It kind of reminds me of the third act tonal swerve of Edgar Wright movies.
Right.
Where it's like, it's a goofy, well shot, well choreographed comedy, and then there's just like bloodshed at the end.
Yeah.
And it's like, Ed, what are you trying to get at here?
Did you watch all of Last Night in Soho?
No. Why would I?
Right. Well,
Does that also do the same thing?
Well, it's a very disappointing culmination to an intriguing setup. Because, man, that is a movie that I really wanted to love. And I think he fumbled a little bit. Because, it's like, oh, like, this is kind of a phantasmagoria, but now it's a giallo. And it's like, yeah, whatever.
Okay, so he did do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember, because it is something that I kind of noticed before, something that you see in Hot Fuzz, where, there's just a shootout at the end and the guy gets impaled on a spike.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But then more so...
I love that movie.
I know, yeah. See, but even more so, it was the end of the world?
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I have some other negative memories of that, but it was... it is sort of sci-fi invasion, but it's also like rocking space, invasion movie that ends with like Martin Freeman's character is turned to mulch. He's killed by the aliens, but they have a like sort of grotesque avatar of him hanging around, and also they said no to the aliens, and so humanity was plunged into a new dark age. And it's like, this is supposed to be just like a fun, like, drinking buddy comedy. Ed, what happened?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like that Nothing But Trouble thing where I was like, okay, like I see how this was extremely funny to Dan Aykroyd, but everyone else is just like horrified.
Yeah, it is. Simon Pegg's character, like in his vanity or whatever, just like condemns humanity to, I don't know, to just like the Stone Age.
Yeah. Which I could see.
And also, like, Martin Freeman is alive, but he's dead.
Right.
Like, so you'll get to see the corpse of your friend walking around thinking everything's okay. Much like at the end of Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick Frost, like, I'm your zombie friend, and I'll play NES games with you.
Yeah, the ending of that movie is actually horrifying.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, maybe Edgar just has a different sense of humor than us.
Yeah, and you know me, I'm not opposed to very, very dark material. Because look at some of the stuff that I've laughed at while we're recording. You laughed
at Shakes the Clown, which you're pretty sick.
I laughed quite a bit during Shakes the Clown.
I laughed once, and it is because the joke was organic to the scene. As we had established, Tom Kenny is an insecure, thin-skinned, successful clown who, while doing blow with a bunch of rodeo clowns, gets sort of intercepted by their manager, who suddenly it's a huge problem that someone in show business does coke, and things get out of hand, and Binky clubs their manager to death with one of Shake's juggling pins. And then
Paul Dooley, who you'll recognize from 16 Candles, Breaking Away. Yeah, just like the like old retired clown you recognize as the mechanic from Cool as Ice. That's right. It's pathetic that I like immediately recognize his voice from having seen the riff tracks of Cool as Ice so many times.
I know, it's sad. But yeah, so Binky kills their manager and has to cover it up and pins it on Shakes. And that is the plot of the movie. That is the sequence of events that make this a story. But he goes, and for some reason he's got a thing for Judy, like the Julie Brown, the girlfriend, and so he goes to
come on,
see
Tim,
her.
You have a thing for Julie Brown.
I have eyes, and I have hands. I want to use them.
I know where you're gonna put them.
Yeah, and I should really keep my mouth shut because we know like 3 friends who like know Julie Brown personally.
Probably like she's a woman who's worked in the industry for quite a while. Like, imagine what she has been through.
Oh God, yeah. It's worse. Like, well, it's even like, I mean, really, ever since it was our delving through the comments on Dina Meyer's website, where I'm like, don't be such a perv, Tim.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, but they are fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Check out Bloody Birthday.
Yeah.
Ooh, mama.
Yeah. So Binky shows up to like put some moves on Judy because otherwise, how would she end up in distress
peril,
later?
Yes.
Yeah, for Shakes to come save her. Which, I mean, typical man. Huh? But anyway, so what happens is Binky explains, and he tries to again frame frame Shakes for killing the manager, but he just gets a little too into it. Where he's like, and then you hit him, and you're like, I just can't stop hitting him enough until he's dead. Wait, did I say me? Oh, back up. Now I got to kill you.
Yeah, and then he mentions like, and they could have stopped me, but they didn't. Referring to his like clown sidekicks. It's like, oop.
Yeah, but then he does like kind of the SpongeBob voice, and he's like, whoa, back up. And yeah, just like how matter of fact he's about it. He's like, oh, now I gotta kill you too.
Speaking of guys doing like that guy's voice, like their voice, like there's a point where Adam Sandler does like an Adam Sandler voice.
Like he's doing Adam Sandler.
I think
drag.
It's when they're kicking the mimes' asses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and there's just a throwaway line of dialogue that's just like. It's like, yes, there it is, Happy Gilmore and such.
Oh, right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
again, he's finding his instrument.
Yes.
He's finding out how to be the drag Adam Sandler that everyone wants to see. the laughing clown to hide him crying on his big pile of money, going on vacation to ostensibly film an $80 million movie for Netflix.
And boy, it is a big-ass pile of money.
We should frame him for murder.
We could do it.
Frame him for one of Tina Fey's murders.
Hey, she might even help us. But
yeah. That is the level of spite that runs deep at SNL. Oh, I'm confusing her with a character from Only Murders in the Building, but I digress.
Whatever.
Based on actual Tina Fey, I'm sure.
Come on, comedians play thinly veiled versions of themselves all the time.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah. Before I cut you off, is there anything else that you would like to expound upon with this movie?
It is a sloppy movie that has an original idea, but it falls into just kind of cliche plot beats because you can't just have a random premise and then just have it not really go anywhere. Robin Williams' performance is, like a lot of the movie, is just sort of, it isn't even comedy or banter, it's just sort of yammering.
Well, it's a cameo, so if you're not a fan, it's tolerable. And I think I'm a pretty good gauge for that because my tolerance for Robin Williams in general is extremely low. Right. And I managed to sit through the scene with a couple of chuckles, so it could be way worse. If Adventures of Baron Munchausen, like that is intolerable levels of Robin Williams, and he's in only a couple of scenes.
Just like toxic. Yeah. There are there's some weird shot choices in this. Like there's the scene where we're introduced to Julie Brown. It is mostly shot like through the arm of the other character, so it's like, we're meeting the redhead and her friend Julie Brown. There's the whole beginning of the scene, the whole beginning of the movie starts with Shakes and like a dog eating cold pizza and like this floozy woman. Just
this movie has one of the strongest starts of any film I've ever seen, because the very first shot begins on a dog helping itself to pizza from a box, which is a strong start. Yes.
Yeah, and like if this
I'm
was
already laughing. Look at the dog.
Yeah.
He's eating pizza, and he's not supposed to be eating the pizza, but he's eating the pizza.
Yeah, if this was the sort of Minds of Moria action set piece that they used to secure their budget, I could understand that.
Yeah.
But the movie doesn't follow through with that level of energy or even that level of comedy. We're exposed to a lot of just gross characters, sometimes without any real context given. And the weird thing, like the almost like Lynchian thing, is we've got Shakes driving his little clown car to this birthday kid's party to meet Tim Kazurinsky, who I'm sure worked very cheap.
It did it as a favor.
Yeah.
A lot of favors done on this one.
Absolutely, yeah. But there is a slow motion shot of two kids playing in a sprinkler that I think is meant as a sort of antidote to the sort of grim life that Shakes lives.
Oh, right. And then there's a the soundtrack to that is a knockoff of the Percy Faith song "A Summer Place," the theme to "A Summer Place."
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, well, I know they couldn't afford the rights to that. So they said, can you write us like a version of that, which is supposed to indicate sort of like idyllic suburbs, like slightly marred by the presence of wandering clowns.
Yeah, but the way that it's arranged is like, we've seen just like ugly people, horribly ugly people, ugly horrible people, then two kids, and we're like, wait, are we supposed to hate these two fucking kids too? Oh, these ugly children. Wait, no, they're the. Well, why did you lead us down this path then?
Yeah, I suppose.
So there's a lot of things like that.
Yeah, and there is. While certainly the first third of the movie, especially like a lot of the scenes in the clown bar. I keep going back to Scorsese, but like, you know, kind of that.
Like you made a good point. Like I can see it now. I can see why you went to bat for it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna get all John Cassavetes on these like fucking sad clowns in this shitty bar. With, you know, like the
never addressing why clowns like need makeup when they're not working.
Well, it's a
I guess it's a conceit of the movie.
Tim, it shakes the clown. You should really just relax.
Forget it, Tim. It's Palookaville.
Right. But I feel that, you know, because Bobcat Goldthwait went on to do more features and was, you know, was reasonable enough as a director that people gave him money to make more. Maybe he was a little ambitious with this one and is like, hey, let's do something kind of interesting. Like, you know, like we're gonna move the camera around this bar. Which is understandable. You know, you get a crack at a feature and you want to stunt a little bit. But as I get older as a movie viewer and you begin to understand what a true command of the medium is, Scorsese, or the feeling that I had after watching Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure, where you're like, wow, this, or not to bring up a person who is
Terrifier again.
Shut the fuck up. Not to bring up a person who might be kryptonite to the show at this point in time, but Michael Haneke, because like him or
I thought you were gonna say Anna Biller. But...
Oh God, don't get me started. But love him or hate him, you can't say that Michael Haneke doesn't command like every single aspect of his productions. Like he's precise.
No, I believe it.
And he knows exactly what he's doing. And this one, it's like a first-time director just trying to get something on the screen. And there are, you know, you have like canted frames later, which are like, all right, you know, like
yeah, absolutely. Like I just know, like I've pulled this kind of shit in my own like non-career as a director, right? And I, you know, every time I see like canted frames, and they're not bad in this film, but when I see them deployed kind of unsystematically, I just think back to Battlefield Earth, where like every other shot is a fucking canted frame, and it's like, why? Unsystematically, and that is something where it's like, this seems like a good place as any canted frame. Yeah, like you start to wonder if they didn't just like tighten that one knob on the tripod. Right, yeah. It's like you did this on purpose? Like, what the fuck? And going back to what you were saying about A Summer Place. Yes. You know what song they were able to afford the rights to? Da-na-na-na-na. Yeah. I don't know if that was cliche then. It certainly is now. Right. But yeah, it is, Bobcat getting ready and, cleaning himself up and getting into his clown thing. But now I'm a man. So, yeah. But I didn't bother to look up what song that is, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's a movie which is very student filmy, first featurey, crew doing their best in parts. Whether or not that works for you is up for that's up for you to decide, because like I said, see if you like. I enjoyed it. I like Scorsese, and I am like him in many ways. I would go to bat for this movie. Tim less so, but hey, free on Tubi right now, so very little commitment. Just put it on and see if you're charmed beyond that first shot of the dog eating pizza. Yeah, you do have Tom Kenny doing his thing, so kudos to him.
Love him.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just guessing that Bobcat's Police Academy money, must have bought him some kind of cachet to let him keep doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you do enough movies in a franchise, you get to know people, you get a little bit of scratch.
Yeah, because I can definitely see like the resentment that he has about being pigeonholed as the Police Academy movies guy.
And also, as we talked about in our Hot to Trot episode, having interviewers ask him right off the bat, okay, so your first film, Hot to Trot.
Right.
Which could be a mistake that I might make because I love that movie.
Yeah.
Like, that is a movie that meant a lot to me as a kid. So,
yeah.
But I understand why he would feel differently about it because I am very much alone in enjoying that film.
Right, yeah. Or, it'd be like me being like, oh, Giancarlo Esposito, I thought you were great in Bakersfield PD. It'd be like, not Star Wars or Breaking Bad or any of the video games I've done voice work for. Like, no, they that one season.
Tim, it's funny. I think that you actually liked Hot to Trot more than this movie. Or you were at least like less frustrated with it.
Yeah, I think I'm more tolerant because Hot to Trot like set out to be a thing and it was that thing. Like I can really see like all the patchwork on Shakes the Clown, and that's really like my big negative.
Which is sort of funny because I feel that Shakes is much better as like holistically than Hot to Trot, if we're really going to come down to it, because it's yes, it's uneven, but it is someone's vision like all the way through. Hot to Trot, like they had to replace the voice of the main character. John Candy came in and basically like ad-libbed
the Hot to Trot info dump.
It ad-libbed until they had something that they could release. It's a stupid premise because it's about a guy who gets stock tips from a talking horse.
What? I don't see the problem there. What are you talking about?
I'll link the episode in the show notes because, like I said, I'm just happy that someone else knows about Hot to Trot. And maybe some of you will respond to it. I know many of you will say like, Jen, you are fucking insane. But hey,
right,
I've heard worse in my time. But maybe we can finish up with one of the best lines from Shakes the Clown, which was uttered by the great LaWanda Page as one of the sad barfly clowns.
Black Queen of Comedy,
yes. Yeah. I got one of them peanut butter pussies. It's brown, smooth, and easy to spread.
Okay, I will counter that with one of the most workmanlike lines in the script. I will
like,
fire
we are
you so
not
fast.
Going out strong. Fuck you.
Yeah, no. I will fire you so fast you'll be out of work immediately. That is exactly what that means. Yes.
That reminds me, Tim. You and I need to have a talk about you and the show, but let's do it off mic.
At last, release. Yeah, I'm recording. I've recorded 7 hours already.
Every time we record, it's like the movie Contact.
Yeah. Hopefully the mic won't pick up the sound of the fan or the alley cats or the barking dogs or the fire engines or the drag racing or the freeway. But apart from that, I think the audio should be pretty clean.